Good evening and welcome to live coverage of the RWB International Constructors Championship here tonight from Donington Park in the UK. I'm Rob Lomas and I'll be commentating tonight for you. Currently looking at Chris Brook during the last few minutes of qualifying here as he comes around the back of the circuit up towards McLean's right now. Turns in, nice line through there. It's currently in 30th place at the moment because he's one of the many drivers who are still yet to set a lap time as of right now. Heading on to Starkey Straight from Coppice Corner. Coming up to Fogarty's S's now, which looks quite slow and tight on a track map, but in reality it is a fairly quick section of track in a GT3 car, taken in out third gear through Melbourne Hairpin now, and on the run back up the hill towards Goddard's, the final left-handed hairpin. A little bit of a battle there with a Ferrari. I should add, chaps, this is qualifying, not the race, but Chris Brook sets the 23rd fastest lap time of the session so far in the 23 McLaren. Currently 4.2 seconds off the fastest time. Now we're looking at Crawford Brown in the Honda NSX GT3. This is a circuit which is one of the regulars in the British GT Championship, hence why it was added to Assetto Corsa Competizione last year as part of the British GT pack. It's usually, traditionally, has been home to the final round of the championship, the more often than not in British GT, the title decider as well. Currently looking at Rick Binnersley in the 888 Mercedes-AMG GT3 as he comes down the hill through Craner curves up towards the old hairpin now. Heading through there up towards Schwanz's corner, named after Kevin Schwantz, the legendary American Grand Prix motorcycle rider. This was before the days of MotoGP and back when it was still for the 500s. Through Coppice now and onto Starkey Straight. Arguably one of the best overtaking spots on the track is Fogarty's S's, where Rick Binnersley is coming through now. And again, you can also say the same for the Melbourne Hairpin. If you've got fresh tyres and you can carry the speed through the S's, then, well, you're not going to rule out an overtake potentially at the Hairpin. And also turn 1, Redgate Corner, is another good overtaking opportunity. Rick currently in 30th place at the moment because everyone's just setting their lap times at the moment, and Rick goes up into 14th place in the 888, just ahead of Simon Trebek in the 81 Bentley and just behind Mad Al in the number 5 Lamborghini Huracan GT3. Rick has returned back to the pits as we are in the dying seconds of qualifying here. Oh, there's one of the Hondas just returning to pit garage as well. And it is currently Marco Badowski who is on pole position for Aston Martin, car number 45, just ahead of Radek Schuller in the 96 Honda NSX GT3 and Eddie Warden in the 55 Honda. Kai Banks and Mo Plate are 4th and 5th, both driving the Audi R8 GT3 LMS. Then it's Peter Foldeschi in the number 98 BMW from Crawford Brown in the Honda, Samuel Kruger in the 360 Audi, James Lacey in the 997 Lexus, ahead of Martin Schaefer and Hugo Gomez, both also in Lexuses, as Nathaniel Shirley sets a very late lap time to go up into 5th place there between Kai Banks and Mo Plate in the Porsche 911. Got a few minutes here, we've only got one more car actually on track at the moment, and that is indeed that. Gearing up now for the start of the first race here at Donington Park this evening. I say the first race because tonight we have 2 races here. We have 2 25-minute races, 1 mandatory pit stop per race. And currently, the grid, as I can run down through it, is Marco Badowski on pole position from Radek Schuller. Second row of the grid is Eddie Warden and Kai Banks. Nathaniel Shirley and Emo Plate are on the third row of the grid. Peter Faldeshi and Crawford Brown are on the fourth row of the grid. And Samuel Kruger and James Lacey are rounding out the top 10. Row 6 is Martin Schaefer and Hugo Gomez, with Dan Barnett and Debug on row 7. John McCain and Mad Al are on row 8, ahead of Rick Binnersley and Simon Trebek. Rounding out the top 10, we've got Carl Shepard and Magnus Dahlgren. They're in Dahlgren in 20th place in the number 3 McLaren. In 21st place, we have Craig Gilbert Wood, excuse me, in the number 8 Porsche, ahead of Billy Hutchinson in the 88 Aston Martin. Then we have Xavier Eugeni in the 53 McLaren, ahead of Harry Hottie in the 77 Lamborghini on row 12. Jack Mason is in 25th place in the number 19 Honda, ahead of Matt Hodgson in the number 92 Ferrari on row 13. Then it's Robert de Vries and Al Gartner for Mercedes and Porsche, respectively, on row 14. Then rounding out the top 30, we have Alex Goncalves and Chris Brook in the number 6 BMW and the number 23 McLaren, respectively. In 31st place, we have Matt Sherblum in the 555 McLaren, ahead of Gianni Lenz in the number 7 Lexus. And in 33rd place, we have Damien Vilk in the Lamborghini. So that's the grid for you, ahead of first race here at Donington Park. Of course, Donington Park, very historic circuit in the UK. One of, if not the first purpose-built racing circuits for motor racing in the country. As far as I'm aware, only Brooklands is older. And Brooklands nowadays is not a full race circuit anymore, sadly. Although if you go to the Mercedes-Benz headquarters in the UK at Brooklands, you can, if you book one of their driving packages, actually still drive on part of the original road course on the infield of the oval. And if you go to the Brooklands Museum, you can still walk/crawl, especially given how steep it is, definitely crawling when you get nearer the top, up the banking and just soak in the history and the heritage. Of course, Donington back in 2010 was originally contracted to host the British Grand Prix in Formula 1. And it would have thankfully kept the section from Redgate through the Craner Curves, the old hairpin, Starkey's Bridge, Schwantz, McLean's, which in a full-on Grand Prix car would have been absolutely immense fun to drive. The Coppice Corner would have been moved a bit further away from where it is now, and Melbourne Hairpin, where everyone is currently looking towards, would have been part of the pit straight heading into turn 1. And it's a shame that the reconstruction of the circuit never came to fruition, because it would have been quite something. Really good indeed, especially given that the redesign was actually done by Herman Tilke. But Tilke really kept it very, very sympathetic indeed as to what made Donington Park Donington Park. Drivers are currently coming up to Goddard's Corner now as they're part of their warm-up. Going to be interesting to see how clean the start is, given that half the field might still be trying to come around Goddard, such as the pit straight's location to the rest of it. And we are just waiting for the race to go green now. It has indeed gone green. It's a Good start by Marco Badowski. Also good start by Radek Schuller. Schuller trying to go around the outside into turn one. Badowski able to hold the inside line. Meanwhile, currently looking at Eddie Warden, who's dropped down to 4th place behind Kai Banks. Banks now up into 3rd. Warden down to 4th. Still looking at Eddie Warden in the Honda NSX. He's got Nathaniel Shirley trying to have a look up the inside into the old hairpin. Doesn't quite pull it off. Warden has the inside for the next couple of corners though, and also behind them they've got a very feisty looking MO plate in the Audi R8 LMS GT3. And MO is Peter Foldeschi in the BMW, and you can see the orange car there is the car of Crawford Brown. As Crawford Brown decides to have a look up the inside into Coppice, and there was actually contact there, I think, between Crawford Brown and Peter Foldeschi. No doubt Stewart's going to have a little look into that one as well as they come down Starkey straight into Fogarty's S. Is now currently looking at Dan Barnett, coming in 17th place in the Audi, up into 16th now, trying to have a look there. Has to go through the gravel there because there's a Bentley-shaped object in the way. There's all manner of carnage going on in the background at Fogarty's S. Robert De Vries is coming up into 25th place. Now we're looking at Rick Binnersley in 10th. Just to translate, we are looking at Rick Binnersley in 10th place after all hell broke loose at Fogarty's S's here on the opening lap at Donington. Rick has Hugo Gomez just behind him in 11th place, and James Lacey just ahead of him there in another of the Lexuses. Martin Schaefer in the 3rd of the 4 Lexuses is currently in 12th place at the moment. We're now looking at Damien Vilk, who's made a really good start in the number 22 Lamborghini. Started at the back of the field, now up into 28th place. The Foldeschi has dropped right down the field as a result of that collision with Crawford Brown. Crawford still in 7th place, although no doubt stewards might be having a little look at that as to whether Crawford may have left it a little bit too late or not. Currently on board with Nathaniel Shirley in the number 25 Porsche. Now looking at Dan Barnett in the number 15 Audi. Barnett's got Simon Trebek in the very patriotic liveried Bentley with the Union flag design on it. Of course, it's not the Union Jack, it's the Union flag, I should add, because it can only be called the Union Jack if you are at sea, and it's not raining here, it's bone dry, and they're in the Midlands, in the middle of the United Kingdom, so not too near any major bodies of water, so thus it has to be called the Union flag. Currently looking at Martin Schaefer now, who's dropped down into 14th place, just behind Magnus Dahlgren in the number 3 McLaren, the green into pink into yellow car. Right behind Martin at the moment is Mad Al in the Lamborghini. Mad Al is actually in the highest placed Lamborghini at the moment, doing a very good job indeed so far. Currently in 14th place, so 15th, excuse me, is Mad Al. Martin Schaefer is in 14th place at the moment. Coming down towards the old hairpin now. Very tricky corner as Martin only goes to prove as I say that. I mean, are you sure you're not listening to my commentary, Martin? You should be focusing on driving, mate. As Mad Al has a go at trying to pass Schaefer around the outside and misjudges the braking zone for McLean's, and unfortunately for Al, he's gone into the gravel, which is a tremendous shame. He's doing an incredibly good job up until that point was Mad Al in the number 5 Lamborghini. So we're still looking at Schaefer. He's got Trebek just behind him, then Barnett, Shepherd, Eugenie, Mason, and Mad Al, who's currently shown as being in 20th place, just ahead of Matt Hodgson in the Ferrari. Looking at Nathaniel Shirley in 5th place, got MO plate right with him for company. Now looking at Dan Barnett in 16th. In the number 15 Audi, excuse me, annoyingly. Oh, a bit of a hip and shoulder there from Al Gartner, who ends up hitting the wall on the run between Melbourne Hairpin and Goddard's. Whether that's damaged any suspension components remains to be seen. Thinks it's okay, carries on. Now looking at Matt Hodgson in the 21 Ferrari. car number 92 at the moment. He's got Harry Hottie right behind him. The recovering Mad Al just in front of him. There's Jack Mason in the number 19 Honda. Now looking at Kai Banks in the number 34, excuse me, Audi R8 LMS GT3. Currently third place, just behind Radek Schuller. And with Eddie Warden right with him as well. Now looking at Martin Schaefer towards Simon Trebek's Bentley. Bentley being a fairly common car in the British GT Championship. And as there appears to be an overtake, we cut back to Eddie Warden in fourth place in the 55 Honda, mimicking the Honda F1 team livery from a couple of years ago. Dan Barnett's now down into 16th place, having been passed by Trebek. And Trebek has also, Simon Trebek's actually also got past Martin Schaefer for 14th as well. Martin, someone I know quite well through GT Hub, very, very quick driver, as Dan Barnett comes into the pits for his first pit stop, making the most of an empty pit lane to go through the slow lane there on the pit limiter. Hits his marks, gets his stop nicely. And there's a whole host of drivers come into the pits now. Mad Al, John McCain, Robert De Vries, Damien Vilk, Jack Mason, all in for their opening pit stops. Cars everywhere here in pit lane. There's one of the Porsches there as well. Now looking at Matt Sherblum in the 555 McLaren. Currently up into 22nd place with a very quick BMW behind him of Peter Foldeschi. Foldeschi, who no doubt is at the very least mildly annoyed following the incident earlier on with Crawford Brown, is going to want to try and make up as many positions as he possibly can, given how quick the BMW is and how quick Peter is as a driver. I honestly wouldn't be surprised in the slightest. Currently looking at Emo plate now in the number 71 Audi in 6th place at the moment. Coming down the pit straight as one of the Porsches is forced to wait actually at pit exit while this train of cars comes through. Coming down towards through Craner curves now up towards the old hairpin. Just see the Porsche there of Nathaniel Shirley in front of him as Matt Hodgson and Harry Hottie come into the pits. Now looking at Matt Sherblum. Peter Foldeschi's got past him. He's now got another BMW of Alex Goncalves right with him. As Matt comes across to take the racing line. Is Goncalves going to be able to get it done up the inside? Yes, he is. Matt's giving him plenty of room there on the inside. Very, very sporting driving from both Alex Goncalves and Matt Sherblum there. Meanwhile, currently looking at Emo plate coming through the Fog TS's with Nathaniel Shirley up towards the Melbourne hairpin now. Very tricky corner this. It's a downhill braking zone. You think you can brake later than you can, but you suddenly realise that you've got the gradient well and truly against you. Currently looking at the battle here between James Lacey and Samuel Kruger now as they head up towards Goddard's. Kruger on the inside, expected to hold the position. Lacey's going to have to maybe have a go into Redgate. Currently on board with James Lacey now in the number 997 Lexus RCF GT3. Coming into Redgate now, not quite close enough. Now we're looking at Peter Foldeschi, who's got a slightly bruised looking McLaren. There you can see maybe a little bit of damage to the front end of Chris Brooks' McLaren, car number 23. We're looking at the number 98 of Peter Foldeschi, which should quite frankly be a fair bit further up the field than it is, in all honesty. Following the opening lap incident, as Shepherd has come into the pits in the number 20 Ferrari. Currently midway through the... coming out to midway through the race. Coming out to midway through the pit window as well. Been an action-packed race here at Donington Park, situated not too far away from East Midlands Airport. In fact, East Midlands Airport perimeter fence is not all that far at all from the far end of the circuit where Peter Foldeschi is now. Coming up to Coppice Corner, Foldeschi is not all that far away from the airport there. The distance between the edge of the perimeter fence and the circuit boundary, very, very close indeed. As I can confirm, having been to Donington for a test day and to record a interview literally just before the first lockdown in the UK. A bitterly cold day, but more than made up for by the fact that we had Ford Capri V6s, the Thierry by TDS Orica on track, and many other fantastic cars, including Tommy Erdos and in the RML Lola MG, two-time class winner in the LMP2 class at Le Mans back in 2005-2006. Emo has pitted. Gilbert Wood is in the pits in the number 8 at the moment. A lovely track this as well. Of course, Donington in the 1930s used to be a fair bit longer. The Melbourne hairpin used to be much, much, much further than it is now. After the war, it was brought by Tom Wheatcroft, who brought it back to standard for motor racing and then to international standards, where it ended up becoming a Formula One circuit back in 1993, the European Grand Prix, because the Pacific Grand Prix at Autopolis fell through. And what a race that was. Ayrton Senna going from 5th to 1st on the opening lap in what was definitely not the car to have that year, the McLaren Ford. I'm looking at Harry Hottie at the moment in the Lamborghini, but that McLaren Ford was quite underpowered, especially compared to the Williams Renault that year. The McLaren weren't even Ford's #1 customer team at that stage. That was actually Benetton. And speaking of Lamborghini, McLaren were trying to test the Lamborghini V12, and Senna and Mika Hakkinen were very enthusiastic about it, even though at one point one of the drivers was actually overtaken by one of his comrades during a test at Silverstone, as Crawford Brown gets very close to the back of Nathaniel Shirley heading into Melbourne hairpin. And sadly, McLaren never ran the Lamborghini engine. They went for a modified version of the Peugeot V10 Le Mans engine, an engine which kept on trying to destroy its own flywheel more often than not. It's fantastically unreliable, even by the standards of the early to mid 1990s it was. As Crawford Brown has come into the pits for his first pit stop, and his only pit stop, in fact, there's only one in the race. Debug has also come in from 11th place at the moment, so no doubt he'll drop down a couple of few positions. Currently looking at Matt Sherblum in 20th place in the now 21st as Shepherd gets past in the Ferrari. Matt's doing a splendid job as ever in the very patriotically liveried 555 McLaren, the blue and yellow of the Swedish flag, as Debug has just received a 30-second stop and go penalty, I'm assuming for speeding in the pit lane. That's going to be a tremendous inconvenience for Debug, I must say. Sherblum now back up to 20th place as Peter Foldeschi has come into the pits in the 98 BMW. Still looking at Matt's right now. I'm now looking at Mad Al in the Lamborghini, car number 5, as he closes the gap to Matt's, with John McCain in another McLaren 720S GT3 right behind him. McLaren, both the McLaren and the Lamborghini, relatively popular in the British GT Championship. The Lamborghinis, especially run by Barwell Motorsport, fantastically quick indeed. So the plethora of Aston Martins in the field as McCain tries to have a look around the outside of Mad Al as Debug has already got past Goncalves for 16th place. But it really matters for Debug because he still has that penalty looming over him. In fact, Debug's come into the pit, so has Goncalves. Simon Tribeck is in the pits as well for his mandatory pit stop with just under 10 minutes to go here at Donington Park, excuse me. Kevin Shepherd in the number 20 Ferrari in 16th place at the moment, coming down through towards Craner Curves right now into the old hairpin. A little bit nearer than it was originally. Originally, it was, I don't think we're going to quite see it. No, we're not, unfortunately, from that helicam, where the original old hairpin layout was. Now looking at Xavier Eugenie, excuse me, in the 53 Ferrari, who is also yet to pit. So far, Eugenie in 14th place at the moment, as Kai Banks, Sam Kruger, Rick Binnersley have all come in as well. So has Marco Badowski. Marco, the long-time leader of the race, is coming for his pit stop. No doubt Radek Schuller is going to be trying to get the hammer down right now to try and maybe get the undercut, as a little bit off there goes McCain at the Fog TS's. Mad Al is on the inside of Matt Sherblum. Out breaks him there, and come to think of it, actually gets past the Ferrari of Shepherd as well, just about briefly. Shepherd is on the inside line though for Goddard and just about manages to hold on. Shepherd having outbraked himself somewhat there into the Melbourne hairpin as Matt Sherblum comes into the pits. Mad out currently in 17th place at the moment, now up to 16th. Coming out of Redgate, down the hill through Hollywood towards Craner Curves now, up towards Old Hairpin. A superb piece of race circuits, no doubt one of the finest pieces of circuits you're likely to find anywhere in the world. Coming through McLean's into, so Schwartz into McLean's now, excuse me, heading up the hill towards Coppice. Because of the gradient, you can actually brake really quite late for Coppice as well. As you're going uphill, you can take a little bit more speed off a bit shorter. Down Starkey Straight, past the what used to be the museum at Donington Park. Hugo Gomez has come into the pits from 5th place as well. Mad Owl currently in 16th, putting the pressure on Shepherd, with Gilbert Wood right behind him in the Porsche. Of course, the museum at Donington Park had one of the finest private collections of Grand Prix cars anywhere in the world, in my opinion, including a Jordan 191 from the 1991 season. Absolutely gorgeous car to this day still. Radek Schuller still yet to pit, as is this man, Martin Chafer, who's now down in 8th place, having just been passed by Crawford Brown. Crawford having also pitted as Radek Schuller comes into the pits now. Has he done enough to get the undercut on Marco Badowski? It remains to be seen. Radek has passed the timing line already. Now we're looking at Robert de Vries. Also Cam cuts away there for a moment as de Vries has Harry Hottie only 0.3 of a second behind him. Hottie in the 77 Lamborghini, de Vries in the 69 Mercedes. Credit where credit's due to Damien Vilk, up into 24th place at the moment, having started last, as Shepherd tries to, and in fact has just been overtaken by Mad Al. Al on the inside as this 4-car gaggle comes into Melbourne Hairpin. Shepherd a bit later on the brakes there into Melbourne Hairpin, able to get the place back. Now looking at John McCain. Now looking at Matt Hodgson in 19th place. Why is also Cam switched cams like this? I'll keep you updated on the battle for 15th when they come across the timing line, which should be any second now, hopefully, as Robert de Vries has Harry Hottie right behind him. Now we're looking at Chris Brook in 31st place as he gets passed by Debug in the 12 Aston Martin and lapped by Eddie Warden, who is quite some way up the field, to be quite honest with you. It's currently still Shepherd, Mad Al, Gilbert Wood, McCain. Now looking at Damien Vilk, who, given his circumstances, has had a very good race indeed in the 22 Lamborghini, from last 33rd and last up to 24th place. Damien having done a very, very good job indeed, given the circumstances in the Huracan GT3. Coming up towards McLean's now, right on the back of Harry Hottie's fellow Lamborghini. And they got Robert de Vries just in front of them. Just a few attempts in front. And ahead of, a couple of seconds ahead of de Vries in pretty much no man's land at this point is Xavier Eugeni in the 53 Ferrari, who has got an absolute country mile between him and the car ahead of him and the car behind him. Hottie has gone past de Vries. Vilk has a look up the inside at Melbourne Hairpin, sends it and gets the place. Is Jack Mason going to be able to get past as well? We're not going to be able to find out, unfortunately. Meanwhile, Marco Budowski is just behind Matt Sherblem there in the leading Aston Martin car number 45. Marco having not put a wheel wrong all race. The Aston Martin driver, car number 45, having the fastest lap of the race as well in what has been a truly dominant performance. Might not have been the fastest GT4 car, but the Aston Martin in GT3 trim, you see it quite a lot in the endurance races, and there's a reason why. Meanwhile, Dan Barnett is right on the exhaust pipes of Matt Hodgson's Ferrari 488. Hodgson in 17th as they come out of Coppice onto Starkey Straight. Barnett up into 18th place at the moment. Not much in it. Barnett going to get a good run. In fact, Barnett's already through before the braking zone for Fog TS's. Meanwhile, Hugo Gomez is in 11th place. I don't actually know why the autocam has switched to Hugo Gomez, as the car behind him is a lap down, and you could just about see Magnus Dahlgren there in the background. Now we're looking at Martin Kafer in 14th place. Martin in the number 13. He's got a Ferrari behind him. That's Shepherd. That is for position. And just behind them is actually Mad Al in the Lamborghini. Al doing a very, very good job indeed tonight so far, with just over 90 seconds to go here. Now looking at Jack Mason in the Honda NSX car number 19. Through Redgate, down through Hollywood's now easily flat out, flat through Craner curve here. Okay, straightens up on the brakes hard, down to third gear for Old Hairpin. Keep it flat now through Starkey's Bridge. Keep it flat through Schwartz, hard on the brakes now, back down to second or third for McLean's. Now looking at the back of Nathaniel Shirley's Porsche, it's Budowski, Schuller, Warden, Banks, Plate, Shirley, Brown, Lacey, Kruger, Binnersley, Gomez, Dahlgren, Tribeck, Chafer, Shepherd, out, Barnett, Hodgson, Gilbert Wood, McCain. That's the top 20 here at Donington Park so far. Currently looking at Eddie Warden in third place in the number 55 Honda NSX GT3. Currently still looking at Eddie Warden at the moment. And just he comes through Fog TS is now down the hill towards the Melbourne Hairpin. Hard on the brakes now. course, back in the 1930s, the British Grand Prix used to be held here. Back in the days of the likes of Rudolf Caracciola and Bernd Rosemeyer and Tazio Nivellari, as Marco Badowski crosses the line to win here at Donington Park. Matt Sherblum just going a bit wide there. Radek Schuller is in second place ahead of Eddie Warden in third. Kai Banks is going to come home in fourth place for Audi, just ahead of MO Plate. Nathaniel Shirley is expected to come home in sixth place, just ahead of Crawford Brown. James Lacey is home in eighth place. Sam Kruger is expected to come home now in ninth place. Rick Binnersley is next up in 10th, just a second or so ahead of Hugo Gomez in 11th. They both come across the line now. Currently looking at Kevin Shepherd in this little battle here. He's got Maz out right behind him. Al only has one chance left to get past. Dahlgren is in 12th. Trebek is in 13th. Is Mad Al going to have enough in the Lamborghini to get past the Lexus? I don't think so. It's going to be Martin Chafer 14th, Kevin Shepherd 15th, Mad Al 16th, Dan Barnett 17th, Matt Hodgson 18th, John McCain in 19th place, and Xavier Eugeni rounding out the top 20. And Harry Hottie is in 21st place ahead of the recovering Damien Vilk in 22nd. Jack Mason is 23rd ahead of Robert De Vries. Now, Alexandra Goncalves has crossed the line in 25th place. Gilbert Wood in 26th ahead of Hutchinson, 27th. Debug, 28th. Sherblum, 29th. Brook rounding out the top 30. Then it's Al Gartner in 31st. Gianni Lenz in 32nd. And Peter Foldeschi, who I think unfortunately may have had some technical issues there, rounding out the field in 33rd place. That was the end of the first race here at Donington Park. We've just got a short little break here of a few minutes or so between the races. I will be right back in a second. And sorry about that. Back now in time for the warm-up period before the second and final race this evening here at Donington Park. Grid the same as it was earlier. Badowski and Schuller on row 1, Warden, Banks row 2, Shirley, Plate row 3, Foldeshi, Brown row 4, Kruger, Lacey on row 5, rounding out the top 10. Then it's Martin Chafer, Hugo Gomez on row 6, Barnett and Debug on row 7, McCain and Al on row 8, Spinnersley and Trebek on row 9, and Shepherd and Dahlgren rounding out the top 20 on the 10th row of the grid. Gilbert Wood and Hutchinson are on row 11, just ahead of Xavier Eugenie. Eugenie being on the 12th row of the grid. As we are gearing up for the second and final 25 minutes race of the evening here at Donington Park. A true classic circuit in the UK. It's uphill, it's down dale, a lot of character to it. As a circuit, a lot of history as well. Once played host to a round of the American Series, if I remember correctly, back around 2001. I seem to remember watching some video footage of the teams and drivers racing around here as part of a European leg of the American Le Mans Series, which included, if one remembers correctly, a race in the torrential rain at the Nürburgring on the Grand Prix circuit, Grand Prix Strecke, and also a race in Spain, which, if I remember correctly, was at, it might have been at Jarama in Spain, about 2001 or so, and back when Martin Haven was doing the pits reporting. Of course, commentary for the ALMS back in the day having been done by John Hindhoff and Joe Bradley for ALMS Web Radio and also Radio Le Mans. Back in action this weekend at the Dubai 24 Hours, the first big race of the international endurance race of the season, and frankly it's almost anyone's call. Overall, the drivers are trying to get as much heat as they can into their tyres and brakes. Coming out through Goddard's now, supposed to get 2x2. Oh, this looks pretty messy indeed. They go green now. Not the cleanest looking start I've seen in midfield, but they're all hard on the brakes. There's a car on the grass there to the inside. They're trying to go 4 wide almost. There's a Lamborghini getting involved in a little bit of contact. I think that might have been Harry Hottie. Meanwhile, Eddie Warden's in 3rd place, just behind Marco Badowski and Radek Schuller, now down into 4th place. I think Kai Banks has just got ahead. Yes, he has got ahead in 3rd place. There's Nathaniel Shirley there in the black Porsche, ahead of, just getting ahead of Eddie Warden's Honda NSX, just behind Warden now is Emo Plate in the Audi, and then behind him is Crawford Brown in the Honda. There's Peter Foldeshi as well. Now currently looking at Simon Trebek in 17th place as he headed into Coppice on lap 1. Magnus Dahlgren right behind him, Rick Binnersley just ahead of him. So Mad Al, excuse me, just ahead of Simon, because Rick has just got ahead of him. Down Starkey Straight into the Fog TS's now. There's Alex Goncalves going through. Got Xavier Eugenie right there with him in the Ferrari. De Vries having gone up into 22nd place. Some absolutely monstrous drives so far in the first race here at Donington, and Hopefully we might be getting more of the same here in the second race, excuse me. Rather appropriate indeed, given that Donington for many years used to be home to the Monsters of Rock festival, very popular hard rock and especially heavy metal music festival. Likes of Iron Maiden, Guns N' Roses used to headline it. Of course, nowadays home to Download Festival as well. Currently looking at MO Plate in the 71 Audi in 6th place, just behind Eddie Warden in the 55 Honda. Coming up to walk through Coppice now, onto Starkey Straight past the old museum building, which would have been brilliant if it was still open for Download Festival, if there were no bands you wanted to see on stage at the time. Just pop into the museum and have a wee look around the cars there, as Eddie Warden has a little think about trying to go around the outside of Nathaniel Shirley to try and reclaim 4th place. Thinks better of it. Now looking at Martin Chafer in the 11th placed Lexus, with Hugo Gomez right behind him and James Lacey right in front of him. Sam Kruger having just reclaimed 9th place there on the inside at Goddard's. We're looking at Mad Al in the Lamborghini at the moment towards Simon Trevek. There's Harry Hottie coming out to the pits. I think Hottie having sustained some damage to his suspension in the lap 1 collision at Redgate. Looking at Kruger at the moment, there's a Ferrari going very wide indeed there. I think that might be Matt Hodgson, who's also a lap down now. So I think may have been separate incidents there on the opening lap. Kruger trying his best to hold off the attentions of the Lexus armada of James Lacey, Martin Chafer and Hugo Gomez right behind him. Debug is in 13th at the moment. Aston Martin with a very strong driver lineup for this year, with Debug and Badowski leading the line respectively. There's Billy Hutchinson in the Aston Martin. Briefly now we're looking back at Eddie Warden in his Honda Note. Now we're looking at Hugo Gomez. Thanks Autocam. Now we're looking at Kevin Shepherd, in the Aston Martin. So Ferrari rather, as they're all trying to put a lap on Harry Hottie. Oh, there's a collision there. Kruger facing the wrong way. There's cars going onto the grass. Left, right and centre. I think Hodgson's just hit Kruger as well. Very, very unfortunate indeed. Kruger, unfortunately, was stranded pretty much on the racing line there at the exit of Goddard's. Most unfortunate indeed, and Kruger thankfully just about drives into pits. There's cars off left, right and centre at Redgate. Crikey, I can't make out quite who that was, unfortunately. Al Gartner in the Grello Porsche was around that kind of positioning as well. Unfortunately, very, very messy third lap of the races. A driver showing as being off at the old hairpin. Can't quite tell who that is, unfortunately. Back underway now. Can't go on board with Eddie Warden through the Fogarty S's. So named after the 4-time World Superbike champion and all-round cult sporting hero of the 1990s, Carl Fogarty. Fogarty, who to this day still holds the lap record at Aberdare Park in Wales. And that was set back in the around 86, 87, if I remember correctly. There's a MO plate in the Audi coming into the pits to make an early pit stop during the pit window. Pit window open at the moment. There's Debug in as well. So is Binnersley in the Mercedes. To Mad Al, Magnus Dahlgren all coming in as well. Part of the mandatory pit stop here. It's only a 25-minute race. You only have one mandatory pit stop. There's McCain. That's Gilbert Wood in the Porsche. Gilbert Wood was involved in the, I think, in the incident up at Redgate corner. James Lacey is also in the pits in the Lexus. I wonder if he was involved as well. I think Shepherd maybe as well, because he's dropped all the way down to 28th place. Matt Hodgson has dropped a few positions as well for that matter. He's in the pits at the moment in 33rd and last. So I think that's cleared up who was involved on lap 3. Currently looking at John McCain in the 21 McLaren 720S GT3. Coming up through Schwanz into McLean's now. Robert de Vries is in the pits in the 69 Mercedes, as Gilbert Wood, Gartner and Kruger have all come in for their pit stops. And de Vries has taken the speed limiter off a little bit too early, I think, and has copped a stop and go plus 30 seconds. Unlucky for him, sadly. As John McCain comes through the Fogarty S's. Cole Fogarty, up until a few years ago, was still the most successful World Superbike rider of all time, before one Mr. Jonathan Ray started dominating it. Of course, back in Fogarty's day, not that I remember watching it because it was a couple of years before I was born, they used to get crowds of well over 100,000 for the British round at Brands Hatch when Foggy Mania was at its peak. As I've been reliably informed through listening to Midweek Motorsport on Radio Le Mans, thanks to Nick Damon for that. Gilbert Wood also has a stop and go penalty for speeding in the pits as well. Shepherd has come in for his pit stop. Emo Play is currently the fastest of the drivers who have already pitted, or rather Crawford Brown is at the moment, because Crawford's got past Emo, excuse me, and just getting past Chris Brook now. Brook down into 14th place. So Crawford and Emo are currently the fastest drivers to have made their mandatory pit stop in terms of where they are on the overall leaderboard. Emo having a little look around the outside, not quite able to get it done. See a little pass there between Eddie Warden and Jack Mason. That's for 15th place, just behind Chris Brook. So in this 5-car gaggle, you have 3 Hondas, 1 Audi and 1 McLaren. As John McCain comes into the pits in the 21 for his mandatory pit stop. Now looking at Hugo Gomez in the Lexus RCF GT3, being pushed very, very hard indeed by Martin Schaefer. Schaefer only about a quarter of a second behind Gomez at the moment. You see a Bentley there in the background. I think that might be Trebek. I'm not 100% certain. And currently Gomez in 6th place at the moment in car number 14. Martin Schaefer seems to get a better exit though out of Melbourne Hairpin and gets past on the run up to Goddard's. Brakes a fraction of a second later. So Hugo's down to 7th place at the moment. Crawford Brown and Emo Plate still battling away for 12th place here. Crawford just about hanging on at the moment as Simon Trebek comes in for his pit stop. Radek Schuller in another one of the Honda NSXs has the fastest lap of the race so far at the moment, as indicated by the little purple background colour for his position. Still battling away. Meanwhile, we're looking at Jack Mason, who is currently 2.1 seconds behind Chris Brook, 2.6 seconds ahead of Rick Binnersley. I don't quite know, to be honest, why Autocam has selected Jack Mason's car, but nonetheless, we're going to ride on board with him while we can. Past the old part of the circuit there to the left, through Schwartz now as Gianni Lenz comes into the pits, into McLean's, down through the box. Turn in, not too wide on exit. Good line there from Mason. Coming up to Coppice corner now, hold on brakes up the hill. Easy to open the steering up a little bit too much there at Coppice. And then eventually running wide thinking you've got a good exit. It does lull you into that trap, heading into the Fog TSs now. Curve there, you can take a lot of curb on the inside there as Crawford Brown is still in 11th place at the moment, ahead of Mo Plate. Mo doing his damnedest to get past the Honda. Crawford not making it easy for him in the slightest. Having to drive a very, very, very defensive race here is Crawford Brown. Meanwhile, now looking at Al Gartner in the 52 Porsche. Currently down in 29th place, as Craig Gilbert Wood unfortunately has a drive-through penalty now as well. Matt Hodgson currently in last place. Unfortunately, maybe I might be able to get ahead of Gilbert Wood. I'm not 100% sure just yet. Kruger down in 27th at the moment in the Audi as well. I think Kruger's had a bit of a moment somewhere, perhaps, as Gilbert Wood comes into the pits to serve his drive-through penalty. Remains to be seen whether Hodgson can sneak past while the drive-through is being served. I unfortunately don't think that's the case. See the pink Mercedes in the background. That's Robert De Vries in the Mercedes there, the pink car, just behind Al Gartner. Al in the Grello, almost Manti Racing-esque Porsche. There's Matt Scherblum just in front of them. Matt's currently in 18th place at the moment. Yet to make a pit stop though, unfortunately. Alex Goncalves is in the pits from 10th place. So is Xavier Eugeni. He was 13th. Now looking at Chris Brook, currently up to 12th place at the moment, as Jack Mason comes into the pits for his mandatory pit stop as well. Radek still having the fastest lap of the race. Peter Foldeschi doing a good job there in 5th place in the BMW, making up for what happened in the opening race. Peter currently just about 7.6 seconds behind Nathaniel Shirley in the Porsche, as Marco Budowski comes into the pits. It's going to be very interesting indeed. Is Marco going to be able to do enough to protect the leader of the race, or is Radek Schuller going to be able to get the undercut? Currently 5 minutes left on the pit window. About 1 minute 27, 1 minute 28 a lap. About 3 more laps, I'd say, we have till the end of the pit window, so it's going to be quite interesting indeed. As things stand, it looks almost too close to call as to whether Budowski or Schuller or anyone else has the edge here. Brook is in the pits now from 13th place. I'm looking at Kevin Shepherd as he gets passed by John McCain. McCain getting a much better run through the Fog TS's there. There's Jack Mason just in front of them. McCain able to hold on there. There's a Honda in the background, which, given we've seen all the other Hondas so far, means that that is in fact Radek Schuller, the race leader. Kevin just getting out of the way of Radek there to let him pass, as Radek dives into the pits for his mandatory pit stop. A very, very important moment now for Radek, as Chris Brook has a stop and go plus 30-second penalty, unfortunately, for speeding in the pits lane. Just under, just over 8.5 minutes to go here at Donington Park. Shepherd down in 26th at the moment. Now looking at McCain, who is right on the back of Jack Mason. McCain might have enough, not quite, into McLean's. Don't think he's going to have enough into Coppice, is he? I'm not sure. Oh, is Discord lagging? And sorry about that, there's a bit of lag on my end there. Couldn't see Discord for a moment. Matt Sherblam's in the pits. Chris Brooks still has just come in for his penalty. Xavier Eugenie we're looking at in 17th place overall. Radek Struller down to 5th place behind Marco Badowski as Nathaniel Shirley pits from the lead in the Porsche. Will Foldeschi and Schaefer follow suit. There's Crawford Brown in the Honda NSX. Foldeschi has come into the pits. Martin Schaefer hasn't, which means that Martin might be able to sneak in a lap in the lead of the race here. Car ahead of Crawford Brown is a Lexus. That's not for position. That's because the Lexus is a lap down. Coming backs off past the pits there. Let's MO plate through as well. Brown up into 6th place ahead of Peter Foldeschi. Foldeschi having dropped down a couple more places, so Martin Schaefer will have to pit at the end of this lap, but right now is currently stoking it up at the moment in the lead of the race. Now looking at Damien Vilk in the 18th place Lamborghini, car number 22. Past the pits now, heading into Redgate corner once again. Got Debug just behind him in the Aston Martin. Debug not terribly happy after last weekend's race at Brands Hatch, where he felt he had a very, very, very strong car indeed. Currently right on the back of Damien at the moment. Damien currently also right on the back of Xavier Eugenie in 17th place Ferrari. Right behind Debug is James Lacey. So we've got a little 4-car battle here for 17th, 18th, 19th and 20th. And if you include the Aston Martin in the very background there of Hutchinson, that's 21st as well. Who's going to come out on top? I do not know, as Mason has come into the pits as well. Vilk now down to 19th place, having been passed by Debug. Lexus goes on the inside there. Vilk tries to go back. Oh, luckily there's contact between Vilk, Debug and Lacey there coming out of Goddard's. Going to see where that puts them. If Lacey may have made a little bit of a late lunge from what I could make out on Debug, and then Vilk on the outside trying to get the power on a little bit too soon. Lost the back end. Came back towards the track and unfortunately right into the trajectory of one of the other drivers as well. It's a tremendous shame as they're all doing incredibly well up to that point. Debug just ahead of Hutchinson, Lacey ahead of Debug. There's Harry Hottie in the Lamborghini a lap down behind these guys. And then you have Damien and Vilk about a couple of seconds behind Hutchinson. You can just about see in the back of shot if the camera doesn't change. It has changed, unfortunately. Now we're looking at Xavier Eugenie and James Lacey here in the battle for 17th place. Lacey with a better exit coming out of the Fogarty S's. Eugenie tries to go defensive on the inside. He's going to have to. Is Lacey going to be able to get the cutback? No, he's not. Lacey half spins the car off the circuit on the inside onto the grass there. Just about keeps it in front of Debug, but not for long, as Debug is able to get a much better exit out of the corner later on the brakes as well. Clean the tyres, back up into 18th place is Debug in the Aston Martin. As Lacey has a little look up the inside, thinks better of it there. Just 3 minutes of the race to go. Crikey, where's the time gone, eh? They say time flies when you're having fun. They proved it on Brainiac back in the day when I was a young lad. And it isn't half true as well, as Lacey and Debug are side by side on the back of the circuit through Schwartz and McLean's, and Lacey has made a bit of a mistake, and there's contacts, unfortunately, between Lacey and Debug. There's Lacey there in the gravel trap, Debug waiting for him. Is he getting back past? Meanwhile, Mo Plate now has Eddie Warden right behind him, and Crawford Brown right in front of him in the Audi sandwich. Currently 5th, 6th, 7th, these three at the moment, with Crawford Brown in the orange car 5th. There's Harry Hossey just getting out of the way of Damien Vilk there, and Billy Hutchinson. Vilk back up into 18th place, about 3.6 seconds behind Xavier Eugenie. Whether Damien can catch Xavier by the end of the race or not, I do not know, unfortunately. Nonetheless, it's been a very strong drive tonight, all things considered, for Damien, given he started the first race this evening in last place. To be 18th by the end of the second is good going indeed. Mo right back on the tail of Crawford Brown's Honda. Just see the tyre bale flying in the background. A perfectly common occurrence at Donington Park. Not so much on the Grand Prix circuit, but more so on the national circuit. Especially when the touring cars are on track. And yeah, goodbye tyres. Hello, track limits penalties, it seems, from memory. Mo still on the back of Crawford Brown as they head out of Redgate now. Now looking at Kevin Shepherd, excuse me, and Debug. Battle for 21st here. Debug, maybe with a little bit of damage. He's dropped off a little bit compared to Lacey. 3 and a bit seconds now. So Debug really trying to hold on as best he can here, as Eddie Warden has come into the pits with less than a minute to go. Eddie Warden has come into the pits. Whether he's out of fuel or not, there is definitely a white Honda in the pits. That is Eddie Warden. He's dropped 20th place and below. So whether there was a bit of a miscalculation on fuel, I'm not 100% certain. Coming out the final corner now, though, is Marco Badowski, having not put a foot wheel wrong all race, to take the win in the second race here at Donington Park. Radek Schuller coming home in second place. There's Matt Sherblum just in the foreground there. Matt's having to do another lap now. There's Kai Banks coming home in third, just ahead of Nathaniel Shirley. Crawford Brown's just about going to hold on to Mo Plate for 5th and 6th place. Here's Peter Faldeshi in the BMW M4 GT3. And there's Rick Binnersley and Martin Schaefer in the background. Rick just about holding on to 8th place there from Martin. Hugo Gomez is home in 10th. Simon Tribeck has just crossed the line in 12th place, excuse me, in the Bentley. There's Mad Out coming home in 13th. Just seeing Matt Hodgson in the Ferrari there just ahead. Here's Magnus Dahlgren coming home in 14th place. You can see Al Gartner there in the Porsche. There's Alex Goncalves in the BMW just behind him there in 15th. Xavier Eugenie's just about going to hold on to Damien Vilk in 16th place. 17th is Damien. Billy Hutchinson's crossed the line in 18th. James Lacey is going to come home in 19th place ahead of Debug. Kevin Shepherd is right with Debug, though, in the drag race to the line. And Debug is just about going to hold on there ahead of Shepherd. Matt Scherblum is in 21st place first place, ahead of Samuel Kruger, Chris Brooks, Robert DeVries, Al Gartner, Harry Hottie, Eddie Warden, and Matt Hodgson. I wonder if it might have not have been a refueling issue for Eddie, but a technical issue on his end, unfortunately. Eddie was doing incredibly well as well, running well in the top 10 in the Honda. So I wonder if it wasn't a fueling miscalculation, but actually a full-on technical issue, which caused him to head for the pits with just under 8 minutes to go. Oh, it's another fantastic evening's racing here at Donington Park in the RWB International Constructors Championship. You've got the Clash of the Warriors 2, round 2, coming up on Saturday night as well. We've also got on Friday night the final round of the Nächsten 195 Deutsche Tourenwagen Meisterschaft mit AAL. And that's going to be on Race Room Racing Experience at the Autodrome Most in the Czech Republic, a very, very underrated circuit in Europe indeed. My thanks to RWB Nate Newcomer for hosting the stream tonight. Another fantastic evening's racing here on the Constructors Championship. We'll be back next Tuesday for the penultimate round for a 55 minutes race at Paul Ricard in the south of France. But for now, I've been Rob Lomas, and it's bye for now.